So today we're going to talk about driving at night, which is something that you probably haven't experienced until you get a Grenadier. And it's a slightly different experience, and part of it is, and the reason that I'm recording it at night is so that you can see what kind of a light show it is. Because unlike a regular car where you have the speedometer and the instrument cluster in front of you, it becomes really noticeable that you have nothing in front of you when you're driving. It's actually like a dark void. And then over here with the infotainment display, and of course I added the rear view mirror, but even so, they both kind of compete with each other in terms of brightness. You just got this center brightness that sort of distracts you, and it takes all of your attention. Now, of course, during the day, I need the infotainment display to be as bright as possible because it has a lot of glare, and it's not, crystal clear sharp. And I still feel it should be like OLED display, so that it was kind of cut through some of that reflection and glare. But at night, it's too bright, and so finding the setting to turn the brightness down is a bit of a chore. And so during the day, it's not bright enough. At night, it's a little too bright. And then, of course, I added the wolf box mirror, which doesn't bother me. But again, this becomes the light show. And then, of course, I have my phone here, which I created a mount for. But it's interesting. You'll notice when you get a Grenadier that it's otherwise very dark. There's no lighting in the footwell. There's no lighting in the rear. And so I've gone and added some things. I put some USB power on each side of the dashboard, and I put a little LED bulb so that I can find the keyhole. Because one of the number one annoyances, I'm not a fan of the key. I'm going to say that right now. I'm not a fan of the key. I'm hating the key. It's annoying. It's too retro. And yeah, it's kind of fun for a minute, but it's very heavy. And you have to open it up, and it kind of stays floppy, and it's all kinds of annoyance. I unlock the car and I put the key back in my pocket, and then I get in the car and I realize that I need to take the key back out and put it in the ignition, and then you can't find the ignition because it's dark, and even during the daytime it's still pretty dark down there. So I put an LED down here so that I could actually see to put the key in the keyhole. Fine. But I still don't care for the key. I just think that's a step backwards, too far backwards, because I feel like it creates some of the problems that were solved by keyless entries and remotes. But in any event, it's dark down there. That's, I guess, my bigger point. So you got to find the keyhole, you put the key in, and then everything else around me is dark. I see that the buttons on the steering wheel actually illuminate, which I was not remembering, so I'm glad for that. But it just seems like now I'm scanning to see what's lighting up. So there's buttons in the door that illuminate, and maybe I'm crazy, maybe it's not abnormal, but I got in the car the other night and it was really dark out, because it's just past sunset right now, so it's not super dark yet, and everything around me just very dark. The panel up here, and I sort of have it obscured by the mirror, I'll point it out right up here where it says passenger airbag. There's a passenger airbag notification, and it's too bright. Here, I'm gonna release the mirror so that you can see this, and just look up. See these lights up here? That's all the time. And basically, if you're driving by yourself, you get this passenger 2 is off, and it sort of reminds me of, I don't know, when you're in an airplane and it says fasten your seatbelts and no smoking. It's too bright. And let me keep my lane here. It's too bright, and I'm glad I covered it up with this rear view mirror. But it takes getting used to, because it's very dark, and okay, it's time for me to get fuel. Okay, I'm on my way to get fuel. This is another thing. I don't want to make a video about with rants, but the Grenadier tells you need to buy gas when you've got 70 miles left on the clock. And considering it only will go just under 300 miles on a tank, that seems a little soon to start getting warnings. And the warnings start gradually getting more insistent. And I guess I find myself being annoyed by the fact that it's telling me too much stuff in a little bit too harsh of a manner. And maybe it's my interpretation. But normally I don't think I get a fuel warning at 70 miles range. I think it's more like 40, 50, 45, something like that. Because I'll definitely make it to the gas station, but I've gone so far on this tank 220 miles, 218 miles. And the last time I saw this warning, I instantly went and got gas and found out that I still had probably 8 gallons left inside the tank. And so, yes, they're being overly cautious and making sure that you're not going to run out of gas, but it makes you feel like the range isn't very good on the Grenadier. And I think it's a 24-gallon tank, which I wish maybe held a little bit more, because based on the gas mileage, I like cars that have about a 350-mile range, because that sort of meets my needs. And obviously, if you're off-roading, it's a whole different experience and a whole different world in terms of what you need from it. But I find that I like a car that will go about 350 miles on a tank, and so based on the gas mileage that the Grenadier seems to be getting, which is right around 15, it doesn't quite do that. And so you get not quite 300, and then that means that about 230, it's telling you to buy gas. And I think that's a little bit much, because it's actually on the meter, it's showing just a little bit below a half a tank. And so that's fine. It can turn yellow, but that honking sound, and it interrupts the rest of the display when it comes on, is just a little overkill. And hopefully, those are the kinds of things that they can look at, because that's software. That's not, they can't make the tank bigger, but they can certainly adjust the software to not give you these warnings so prematurely. But anyway, getting back to driving in the dark, the headlights are great. And I had a question about the little inner, I don't know, they're not fog lights. I guess they're additional high beam lights that are in the grille. And from reading the owner's manual, they only ever come on if you already have your high beams engaged. So you're not likely to ever see them on unless you're off-road, because we don't drive with our high beams on in traffic. So getting them to come on, the switch is up here, and there's an adjustment also for the angle of the headlights based on the load that you've got. Like if you have a heavy load in the back, it pushes the front up and you can aim the headlights back down, which I find interesting because I've had cars where that's automatic leveling. So the fact that I have to level my headlights seems a little bit odd. When you get your Grenadier, you're also going to want to study the manual in terms of the cabin space lighting, because at first I thought there was no cabin space lighting, but there is. It's just that you have to turn a switch on to tell it that when you open the door you want the lights to come on. And the first time I got in the car, somebody dropped something down in the footwell, and it was at nighttime and we couldn't find it, and it was because the light switch wasn't pushed to say turn on the cabin lighting. So you'll want to make sure that you understand how these buttons work, because you'll want the cabin lighting, because it's sparse at best, but you definitely need it. One of the things that I've gotten pretty tuned in with is the amount of wind noise that the car makes, because when I'm recording like this, I don't have the audio turned up. So I'm actually doing a lot of listening to the sounds that the car makes, and I've noticed I have a little whistle if I'm not using auto with the AC the air conditioning, I get a little whistle tune, and it seems to be tied to the ventilation system. So I have to kind of play with that to see, because as soon as I slow down, it goes away. And so I thought it was an external wind noise sound, but it's actually coming from the ventilation system. And you know, it's a little odd, but it catches your attention. But if I have it on auto, I don't hear it. So also, let's talk about the steering a little bit. There's a lot of comments and opinions about the steering of the Grenadier, and quite frankly, the steering is fine. It's a little different, and it takes some getting used to. But as far as driving it on the freeway, man, it's fine. There's no difference. I'm not driving crazily to keep it steady in the lane. I normally have just one hand, and it's perfectly steady just like that. The only thing that I don't like about it is the turning radius. It sucks, frankly. It's just too wide. And so that's something that they hopefully can take a look at, because if they're going to promote this more on road, then it's something that they're trying to serve two masters, the off-road community and the on-road community. And on-road, it's lacking a little bit. It remains to be seen where they kind of position themselves. I mean, that's Land Rover clearly was off-road, and now it's on-road. And people don't take Range Rovers off-road like they did back in 20, 30 years ago. And I don't know if this will go the same way, but based on the fact that they're pushing the price up and they're pushing the specs up and kind of shooting for selling fewer and going up market, they're going to be trying to appeal to a crowd that has that expectation that drivability will be there in terms of not feeling so off-road. Everything's working fine on the car so far. When I first got the car, it had a door sensor problem, and that they completely took care of it. I can shut the door and know that when I press lock, it's going to lock, and I don't have to worry about figuring out what door didn't engage properly, and I'm quite happy about that. The AC system works fine. It's funny, it's got two personalities. If you have it on auto, it seems to be a different beast than if you have it on manual. And when you have it on manual, you're dialing on how cold you want it and so forth, and where you want the air to be directed. But when you push auto, it seems to kind of cancel that out and just do what it wants to get it cooled down in here. And so sometimes I don't want it to be on auto, because a lot of times in auto it just takes over and the fan goes to the high position and it makes a lot of noise. And if you're trying to talk with people, it's a little distracting and annoying. So the trip computer and the infotainment display, yeah, it leaves a little bit to be desired. Again, there's no physical buttons. There's one on the instrument cluster where I can tap it and see different information, like how many miles I've driven and what my current economy is and some things. But at the same time, I use it normally to tell me how many miles I've put on that tank of gas, because that's sort of how I gauge when I need to buy gas. And it sort of gets lost in the other information. And anytime a warning comes up or a light goes off, which is frequent, too frequent, it takes that part of the display away. So you can't instantly look at your odometer or the trip meter, because it may have a piece of information up there. And that leads me to the only other thing that I'm currently a little gripey about, and that is the camera. The warning light that says the camera is not functioning and the speed limiting system's not functional comes on way too often. It comes on daily, and it'll be just for a minute, and then it'll come back on. It'll disengage and give me a warning with a little, the camera's not doing something, and then it comes back. And I'm starting to lose confidence that if in the pinch that it needs to be there, that it will actually work. because it may at the last second go, I can't, I'm not working, and right when you need it to work. So I'm going to have a chat with the dealer about that, because it's happening way too often. I can be on a certain kind of a road, like if I'm on an express lane where the walls are on the side, the camera doesn't like that, and it just says that the speed assist braking is not working. And then as soon as I get off of the express lane, it's working again. But it does that, you know, I can go through a dip or something and it sort of does the same thing. And so I'm starting to lose faith that it's actually going to work for me at the time that it needs to work for me. So it's a little bit of a conundrum. So I'm going to get gas. Obviously says, how much does it have? It says I still have 72 miles. That's because I'm doing freeway driving, because it told me I only had 70 miles about 35 miles ago. So that needs some adjustment, because I'm still above a quarter of a tank. And so it's annoying, because I'm going to stop and get gas because my car says you need gas, but I don't think I need gas yet. So what did we learn? 17.3 gallons and out of a 24 point something gallon tank. So that means I had 4, 5, 6, 7 gallons of gas left. That is far from empty and does not warrant me having a time to refuel warning all day today. So that's something that I think needs a little work, because I don't mind being warned to get gas, but I need it. I don't need to be having this thing cry wolf. And to me, that's crying wolf. So, interesting. So we'll see. Now, the trip meter says I have remaining range of 270 plus, greater than. And back we are into traffic. Okay, and so I now have AEB not available. Don't know why. Automatic. I believe that's automatic emergency braking. I have to look it up because the little picture doesn't tell me what it really is, and AEB does not tell me what it really is. Again, it's kind of annoying. They created all these acronyms, and I don't know if they're industry standard acronyms, but you know, we all know what ABS is, but I don't know what AEB is. And now it's clear. So that's great that it cleared, but what did I do to precipitate the error in the first place? And so those are the annoyances that I'm having. You know, the car's driving fine. It's not overly noisy. It's easy to steer. It's a little bulky in a parking lot. I have to admit that, you know, this isn't like driving the Mini. There isn't parking for it just everywhere. But that's, I guess, comes with the territory. But it's a good drive at freeway speeds. And it's very smooth, and of course we always have to reset that, which I can't wait until the update comes and I can set that permanently. Likewise, the auto stop start. Okay, I've decided I don't like it. I was trying to give it a chance, but it actually activates the starter every single time, and so it just feels a little bit laggy when you're at an intersection or if you're in stop and go traffic. So if you're in stop and go traffic, it's easy enough to disengage it or to make it not auto stop start. But again, it's one of those things I'd like to set and forget, but unfortunately every time I turn the car off and turn it back on, it comes back on. So, you know, these are all self-inflicted problems. I have no idea if that's a regulatory thing, so I could be all wet in, complaining about it, and it's not INEOS's fault for making a weird decision, because I guess if you're in a rural place, it's different than if you're in stop and go traffic in California, because car will stop and start 50 times in a trip, and you just feel like you're wearing something out. And also the air conditioning stops, the car kind of stops down, and if it's too hot it won't stop, so it's not 100% that it always shuts down. It depends on the temperature of the car and some things like that. So that might distract people thinking that they've got auto stop start and it doesn't always stop, but most of the time it stops. You come to a traffic signal, it stops. And so it's something that on days when I'm in town doing traffic-y stuff, I just turn it off. And it's mainly because I want the air conditioner to consistently stay on. I'm going to turn this off for a second so that you can see that's what the Grenadier, standard Grenadier, looks like. I have these phone chargers. Actually, that's what the Grenadier looks like at night. And it's instruments, but when in front of you there's basically nothing and it's really dark. If I were dreaming, I'd love a head-up display. I mean, I like the retroness of the Grenadier, but I'd like to see a few more modern things in it. Keyless entry, head-up display. Those are probably the top two that I found were very helpful, because not everybody's going to be taking this car off-road. And in California, we don't drive cars where we have to stick the key in the door. And thankfully, you don't have to do that with this car. But the key is so funky, and it's so, you can't tell which direction you're holding, so you always have to look at it to unlock the car. Otherwise, you hit the wrong button. And, it's just little things. And so some days, not a big deal, and other days, it's kind of annoying you. And because you wish it would be better. You're like, oh, you let me down. You got it so right, but this could be better. And I've had comments, people love the key. I bless you. I'm glad you like the key. And keys are kind of fun, but this key weighs a couple ounces, and it's like carrying a rock around in your pocket. And I don't know if that's because of the battery that you need or that it needs, but some of the things that it does, I've set them differently, is when you unlock the car as you're walking up to it, the default setting is for it to relock itself if you don't open the door within 10 or 20 seconds. So what I found was I'd unlock the car as I'm walking up to it, and just before I grab the door handle, boop, it locks itself again. And so I turned that off. You can disable it in the settings. But in a parking lot, the key fob works from a pretty good distance. So if you're trying to find your car in the dark, you can hit your button and it will unlock the car and it lights up. So that's kind of a plus. But and then when you lock it, you'll notice it makes a little beep when you, well, I think that's the setting that I have. It makes a little beep when you lock it, but if you push the lock button a second time, it extinguishes all the lights, because when you first lock the car, it leaves the head and the tail lights on for you to like walk away and not be in the total darkness. But if you don't want that to stay on, you just hit the lock button a second time and it will beep again, but those lights will go off. I thought that was kind of interesting. So I guess that's a little hidden feature that I didn't know about, but I'm glad that I found. Because sometimes I feel weird walking away from the car and the display is on and the lights are on, and it makes me wonder if I turned everything off. But yes, you have to take the key out. Can't tell you how many times I've gotten out of this car and I didn't take the key because I'm used to walking away with the key in my pocket. But don't worry, you can't lock it without the key, so I've never, I've not locked myself out of the car. But it's some of those little things. I get in the car after I unlock it, and I put the key back in my pocket and I'm reaching for a button to start the car, and it's like, oh no, it isn't that. So we get what we get. I chose it and I like it and it's unique. I get nice comments about it, and that's fun. But again, at the end of the day, I bought it for me. I didn't buy it for other people to be impressed. And so, for now, we're having the Grenadier experience. There may come a day when it's like, nope, that's it, I'm done. But for now, we're liking it. It's just that I'm pointing out all these weird things that, like this passenger airbag light. I'm telling you, when you get your Grenadier, if you don't already have one, it's a little in your face because it's on and it's bright for what it is telling you. It's like, okay, that's nice, my airbag is there. And it normally, if I'm driving by myself, it shows me that there's an airbag with a slash through it telling me that the airbag is not engaged. So, it's kind of curiously odd. But anyway, I appreciate you watching, and please subscribe if you're interested in videos like this or things about the Grenadier or new cars. At some point in time, I'm going to start switching to other brands and ordering other cars that I have. And later this year, I'm going to be doing some factory tours and some different kinds of things that I'll be posting videos on. But at the moment, since I'm deep into the Grenadier, I've been posting a lot of Grenadier videos. So I appreciate your watching. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.